Howdy guys, welcome back to the channel. If I can get my door open. Today we're gonna try to hurry up and get this Ranger engine together. It's all wrapped up in a bag. Trying to keep it safe and clean. Today we're gonna put the heads on it, the windage tray. We're gonna try to put the pan on it, the oil pump and you know, all that fun stuff in there. Not in that order, specific order, but we're gonna try to get it done so we can get it swung into the Ranger. Because today's October 1st and the snow will be coming soon, and I really don't want to be driving the Mustang to work like I did last year because my Ranger was in pieces due to a blown engine. So we're gonna try to get that working today, at least moving along to where, you know, we can at least swing it into the truck and I can take it from there and get everything bolted up to it, and hopefully maybe even tomorrow get it cranked. So we'll see. I'm not holding my breath, but hopefully by the end of this week I should be able to at least put power to it and crank on it. First issues I ran into here was I lost my dowel pins that centered the cylinder heads onto the block. If you don't know what they look like, I'll open this box here. I searched for a long time for these things. Pretty much what they look like. All they are is a roll pin that sits in the cavity on the block. There's two on each cylinder head, and they just make everything lined up perfectly, and I could not find those, and I was going to have to get some stock and cut these down and make some, but after talking with Summit, they were able to actually find these, and I was the first one to actually purchase these in a really long time. So they had to re-add these to their parts list on Summit Racing, and then they had to email me the link because I still couldn't find them. So they're really important. So when you pull these things apart, don't lose these. If you don't remember from my last video, we did the complete bottom end, torqued everything, you know, did the rotating assembly. Now we got to do the oil pump. Now I'm going with a Melling, standard pressure, standard volume, because I'm not really racing this truck. I just, you know, did all the fun stuff like the ARP studs and everything, ARP rod bolts, and the stronger mains, just because I don't want to spin a bearing. These are all torque to yield bolts when they're stock from the factory. So I replaced everything with 12-9 grade steel, including the head bolts, which are down there. Going with a nice Melling pump. They, of course, include a gasket. Now, when you go with a Melling pump, they don't want you to use the old pickup tube. So you have to use their pickup tube, which I have the old one over here, too, so you can kind of see the difference here. This is the old pickup tube. You can see it's got a little bit of a slit there. It's the old pump as well. I had to yard the bolts out of it so I could, you know, use those to attach the... That's the new pickup tube. No little slit, just full volume. You know, nice copper welded, copper brazed steel. So that's your difference right there. That's one of the reasons, because they don't want any restriction, you know, on the pump. So when you buy a Melling oil pump, they're going to recommend you use one of these. So I am going to be using blue Loctite on all these bottom end bolts. I didn't use them on the mains, but I am going to use them on the little studs that hold down the windage tray and the little bolts that hold on the oil pickup tube. So when you use Loctite, you want to make sure you get all the oil off the threads, both the threads on the bolt or nut and whatever you're screwing these guys into. Otherwise it won't set up and hold. So you want to make sure those are all clean, which I'm inspecting this one right now. Carburetor cleaner or brake cleaner works really good at removing, you know, the oil and stuff. I'm using some gum out carb cleaner. It works pretty good. So yeah, just make sure you get them real good and clean, and then you can wipe them off with a shop towel, you know, just to make sure you get all that oil and stuff off, because you don't want to spend all this nice time and money on this engine, make it great, and then have a bolt back out somewhere and cause all sorts of catastrophic issues. So Melling does give you all necessary gaskets. There's a gasket down there on the block that is a gasket for this guy. Then you got your gasket for your pickup tube. You know, just match it up, pretty simple. And then, yeah, like I said, Loctite the all the bolts that you're gonna use. You know, it doesn't take a lot. This one's like a glue stick, basically. I've had this one for a long time, but it's still good. Just put a little bit on there. A little bit of a piece of sand or something on it. Get that off. That's basically what you're looking for right there, is just a little bit, you know, on the threads. Do that to every one of them evenly. Crank them down. There's no torque specs that I could find for the bolts that go to the oil pump from the pickup tube. So get them tight, and the Loctite should do the rest. Also make sure that the tools that you're using are clean. You don't need any unnecessary crud or sand or anything getting in this engine that could hurt it. Pickup tube, oil pump. You just go just like this. Make sure your gasket's nice and square. And you just start threading by hand the bolts back in. To mate these two pieces together. And then I believe these are a T27. You want to crank them nice and snug, not too tight. You don't want to shear anything off, but tight. Remember that Loctite's on there, so it'll help hold these guys in here. I'm wearing a jacket, even though I'm in the full sun, because it's about 50 degrees out right now, which is not super cold, but it went from the 80s down to the 60s for the high. So you really don't want to be freezing while doing this. That's your complete unit, your oil pump and your pickup tube. Brand new, both Melling. I think this is a number 128. The pump is an M128, and the pickup tube, it'll have a number on it. I can't remember what it is, but it'll tell you which number you need to have the right, you know, parts on this thing. But they look great. It should flow a lot of oil, and if there's for some reason any debris in the engine, that screen will pick it up. So like I said, the oil pump goes right there. That's the gasket provided by Melling. There's your drive shaft right there from the distributor down to the oil pump. So that's where the oil pump sits. So we're gonna go ahead and install that now. Tighten down right now. The only thing I gotta do, because these bolts are not the original bolts, they're stronger, but they might also be too long. So what I'm gonna do is, once I get this tightened up, I'm gonna turn this over to see if there's any interference. There shouldn't be, but I'm just gonna double check, because you never know. So we'll just have to crank it over and make sure there's no interference between either item. And then if we're good, we'll go ahead and proceed to clean up the windage tray there. Clean up all the threaded holes on these so there's no oil in them. Loctite these pieces here and get them in there. The oil pump is completely tightened up and installed. Torqued real tight. The drive shaft is free. It can move up and down, so there's no binding there. I did turn this over one full revolution to make sure we had clearance on everything, which we do. It's all that matters. We're gonna go ahead and clean up these threaded areas just to install that windage tray. And then we're gonna go from there. We'll flip her back over and slap the heads on. Now I have all the holes degreased. So I have the studs all set. They actually have a nice little Allen head in them. Generally on a stud, like on ARPs, you twist them all the way down by hand till they bottom out. And then that's it. You just red Loctite, bottom out by hand, and then that's it. You don't crank them down. These I actually crank down a little bit with blue Loctite. That's all I'm using on this thing, on this stuff that I want to be able to take apart at some point if I have to. So next, I gotta clean this tray up just a little bit better. It's got a little bit of sand and stuff on it and some old copper residue from when I put CSL in this engine when it was blowing up, just to prove to a friend how effective it is. So I gotta clean this up just a little bit better, and then I'll be able to put it on and bolt her up. Got the tray cleaned up the best we can. As you can see, there's actually a little bit of surface rust starting to accumulate on this thing. You need to get this sucker together, you know, as soon as possible. So this is pretty much how it sits on there. These are kind of weird. Hopefully we can actually get this on here without having problems. Just once you have two hands, then you can do just about anything you want. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put some blue Loctite down here towards the end where the nuts are gonna be, and that should be it for here. And then I believe when I come back later, we'll go ahead and stick the oil pan on it and do all the seals and stuff back here, and should be good. So I've got blue Loctite on all those studs. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna start putting the nuts on. I know they look tiny, but I mean, all you gotta do is hold on this this plate here, windage tray as they call it. So they have aftermarket ones that have slots in them and everything to pull the oil away from the oil pan and all that, what you want, because I know in like this Mustang, I have talked to a few guys that have built them for years and raced them and done all that stuff. They said you can hold up to like a quart and a half in the vortex of the crank spinning, which will cause you to lose power, and it can also cause a low oil situation in your oil pan, which I do have a deep oil pan, and it's 7-quart oil pan on that thing, because I do have a high pressure, high volume oil pump. So you can actually pump the stock pan out faster than the oil can return with the engine running at higher RPM. So, excuse me. So you got to make sure that you set everything right, however you're going to drive it. This is the stock windage tray. I'm going back with it. This hole, if you're wondering, is where the dipstick comes in, right here on the side of the block. Comes through there and all that fun stuff. So I made sure everything is tight. Of course, one more time before setting this stuff on here, because I like to triple check everything, especially when it's sat, just to make sure, you know, that nothing's relaxed and loosened up on me. Okay, so now we got the windage tray on and all tightened up real good. Got all the alignment dowel pins in, so now we're ready for our head gaskets. Surface is as clean as it's gonna get without shooting her down with carb cleaner. So we'll take one last look at these really nice clean pistons. This is the last time we're going to see them for a long time. So the gaskets I'm using are Felpro. That's all I generally ever use is Felpro. These are some really nice head gaskets. They've actually got a silicone rubbery finish on them, and they're just really nice. Felpro always has nice products. I recommend you use their gaskets. This head gasket is a 9511 PT. Really good labeling, you know, up front. So they're just a really nice product, and I've used them on every engine I've ever assembled, and I've never had an issue with gaskets failing, especially, you know, prematurely or because you use a different oil or whatever. They always have really nice product, and just appreciate their business. Well, that's it for today's video. Stick around for the next one. Should be following shortly, and you can continue to see the final assembly of the 89 Ford Ranger 2.9 V6.